Tashi and welcome back to Londonney's Mission in Tibet series. I am Lhamo and today I am joined by Ngawang Tenzin. Ngawang Tenzin has dedicated over 25 years of his life to Tibet and the Tibetan people. His contributions involve working for the Central Tibetan Administration in India, as well as being the CTA representative for Northern Europe, Poland and the Baltic states. He's also worked in the private office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, as well as doing so much generally for our Tibetan community. Unfortunately, we do not have enough time today to cover every aspect of his life, but I'd like to focus on some of his key contributions and achievements. Ngawang Tenzin, I'd like to thank you for joining us today for Londonney's Mission in Tibet series. The Mission in Tibet series is about showcasing the Tibetan people's struggles, hardships, and their dedications to the Tibetan people for the rest of the world to see. Londonney would like to thank you for doing this interview in English today. The reason being is we want to reach a wider audience, including Tibetan supporters, all past, present and future, as well as making the interview more easy to follow for Tibetans who have been raised in the West. Can I start off with asking you a little bit about your background, your childhood, where you were born, and these basic questions, please?
Sure, yeah. First of all, I would like to thank Dalai and the Londonney for your kind invitation. Normally, I would like to describe that I just happened to be born in Tibet, because when my parents escaped from Tibet, I was about 1 year old, and I then, I think so, my parents both passed away when I was at the age of 4 or 5, and then my brother, who was studying in the Missouri Central Tibetan schools, he came and took me away to Missouri, where he approached Mrs. Rinjin Tsering, who was head of the Tibetan Homes Foundation, the Tibetan orphanage in Missouri, where she took care of me, and I was then put in an orphanage and designated to stay in home number 3. And then both my parents, as I said, since I was had passed away when I was at the age of 4 or 5, Mrs. Tsering managed to find a sponsor for me in Switzerland, and they were very kind to sponsor me to an Indian school in local Missouri, and it's called the Missouri Public School, where I spent about 10 years. The majority of the students obviously were Tibetans, and then we were about 25 Tibetan boys and girls who had similarly had sponsors sponsoring them, and we spent the better part of the year in the school from March till December, and then during December to February, March, we were taken back to the orphanage, and in my case I was back in the Tibetan Homes Foundation, home number 3. And the good thing about that childhood is, although we were without any parents, most of us, at the school, Indian school, we never had any sense of being isolated or discriminated. The Indian teachers and the students were very, very friendly to us, and we were treated at par with the Indian students, with all the facilities and all the opportunities provided to us. In fact, I remember, most of the positions, either in the games or in the dramas, they were, equally or sometimes especially given opportunities for Tibetan students, and it was a really very friendly and family-oriented atmosphere that we felt. And also, looking back, I feel many in my generation feel quite fortunate, because on the one hand, my parents had to leave Tibet following China's invasion and occupation of Tibet. Then they became refugees, and then their children who literally grew up in India had all that good opportunity to get good education. And normally when I give talks to when I was working at the Office of Tibet, I used to give talks. I would say that as a Buddhist, we don't believe in God. But for me, if somebody asks, who is God for you? For me, it would be my Swiss foster parents, because they, without even seeing us face to face. All we did was having correspondence, by letters, and they, treated us just like their children and provided us all the education in school. And then after schooling, after finishing my 10th grade, I was given the opportunity to do my further studies, Bachelor of Arts in Chandigarh, and the same Swiss family again continued to sponsor me for my college education in India as well. Thereafter, coming back to my educational qualifications, after that, after finishing 3 years Bachelor of Arts in Chandigarh, I did a 1-year diploma course in journalism and mass communication. And after that, in 1985, I sat for the Central Tibetan Administrative Service examination, and I was then qualified to work in the Department of Education, Department of Information. Currently it is known as the Department of Information and International Relations. And my first position there was as a research assistant, which I did for about a year.
Can I ask a few
Sure.
questions about
Sure.
your sort of education and childhood? Can I start with asking you, what was your fondest memory of being in House 3?
Okay, the fondest memory was, there was, it's a mixture of good things as well as not so good things. The good things would be in the sense, like, since we were children and certain big issues like the Tibetan struggle for freedom, that sort of thing, it wasn't much of a concern. All we would like to engage is playing. And then at the time, unlike now, children have all the material facilities like computer games, this and that. During our time, all we had to play was, we used to play with those small stones. So the smoother the stones were, the better it is, So we used to play with those stones, or we used to improvise and make some play materials where we would create some, small football made of socks, that sort of thing. Just play around, run around the playground, that sort of thing. And then, breakfast, lunch, dinner would all be prepared, because it was prepared by the foster parents as well as the senior students. The this little bit sad part was, in a way, it was like living during a Dickinson era, where food wasn't sufficient. You didn't get proper nutritious food, but whatever you had, you just ate it, but then looks like everybody seemed to have grown quite well. Looks like even though the food was not that nutritious or not that good, there was some sort of a blessing coming through it, like maybe because of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's blessing and all, and everybody was fed quite well, although the qualities weren't good. Only once in a while during Tibetan New Year, His Holiness's birthday, that sort of thing, we used to get special diet where we were given good quantity of meat and fruits, that sort of thing. It's sort of a mixture, yeah.
You mentioned that at Mysore Public School there were lots of other Tibetans.
Mussoorie Public School,
Mussoorie,
yeah.
sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about in the University of Chandigarh, when University of Punjab in Chandigarh, did you have other Tibetan students there as well?
Yes. When one of the reasons why I chose to study at Chandigarh University is a couple of my friends had earlier joined the university a year or two before, so that attracted me to join the Punjab University Government College in Chandigarh, thinking that at least I will have some friends and to take me around and also to guide me. And there were at least over 100 Tibetan boys and girls, And the good thing about this is the Tibetans were all very united. And it's during this my college in Chandigarh that I became a little bit more passionate or drawn towards the Tibetan issue, because like in most of the colleges, most of the regions in India, we have branches of the Tibetan Youth Congress, and in Chandigarh we had the Regional Tibetan Youth Congress, where every year, the students would gather Tibetan students would gather for a meeting, and then we would elect the office bearers for the Regional Tibetan Youth Congress. During my third year, I was elected as the Joint Secretary of the Regional Tibetan Youth Congress, and that further encouraged me to regularly attend the meetings, be more active in the issue of Tibet campaigns, also making the local Indians as well as the media more aware about the issue of Tibet. And also, since I was a little bit keen in writing, and I used to read a lot of magazines and newspapers, I was also then asked to edit the Tibetan Youth Forum, which is the magazine of the Regional Tibetan Youth Congress. So overall, it was a great experience being at the college university in Chandigarh. Again, as I said, I also made a lot of Indian friends, and even at the college university level, the good thing, and I'm really very grateful to the government and the people of India, is they never made the Tibetans feel like second-class citizens, or we were all in the same category, and everybody treated us very well. Yeah.
Oh, that's really good to hear. What made you decide to do the CTA examination?
After I finished my diploma in journalism and mass communication, one of my professors, he later became the editor of the Statesman magazine, the branch in Chandigarh, and I got an invite from him asking him to come and work at the newspaper. But then I reflected and I thought, since I don't have much information about or knowledge about Tibet or the Tibetan issue as a whole, maybe the first stepping stone is, how about if I work for a couple of years at the Central Tibetan Administration in Dharamsala, get enough information and knowledge, and thereafter, if I get posted as a correspondent based in Dharamsala, then I can cover issues of Tibet with a much better knowledge and information. So that's the reason instead of going to work in an Indian newspaper, I chose to work at the Central Tibetan Administration. And there, as I said briefly, I passed the exams, and then I was posted as the research assistant at the information office. And from there on, it was like, literally it was like something karmic, that I just got stuck into that Central Tibetan Administration, and then I thought, maybe continue to serve the Tibetan administration and His Holiness and the cause, because times just flew by, and I really enjoyed what I was doing, and also discovered and met a lot of other Tibetans who were very young, very educated, although they could work elsewhere, but they also chose to work there, and it was a lot of commitment, determination, and I thought, okay, let me also do my bit for the cause.
What were your main roles in the information department for the CTA when you joined?
Okay, when I first joined as the research assistant, all we were primarily doing is reading through a lot of Indian newspapers, as well as newspapers in English published by the Chinese government, going through that and trying to analyze the information therein, and then feed the department, information department secretaries, so that then they can also frame the policies. And sometimes we would also be involved in drafting press releases relating to Tibet, and in case there was some urgent situations developing in Tibet, like arrest of Tibetan activists, and then again we ended up drafting press releases, that sort of thing. And also the another job was like, since I was quite good at typing, which I learned in Chandigarh, I was given a lot of manuscripts and materials to also type. Yeah.
And I read at the time that you also were an editor for a Tibetan journal. Is that correct?
Yeah. So that came a few years later. Now, what happened is, after my about over 1 year posting as the research assistant at the Information Office, I was posted to His Holiness the Dalai Lama's bureau in New Delhi, as where I worked as the press officer. And it was part of that time what happened is, the Kashak or the cabinet, they created research and analysis wing, something akin to sort of a think tank like in India and you find in other countries. So we had 4 staff members there. One was responsible for the overall office, one was responsible for China issues, one was responsible for Russian and other Asian issues, and then I was involved for dealing with the press. So again, one of my main roles over there was dealing with the press, Indian press as well as international press, and drafting press releases. And those days it was quite challenging, because unlike these days, you don't have emails or any fast mode of communication, and in case you would like to send a press release, I had to physically go to each and every newspaper offices, Indian newspaper offices, foreign news agencies, physically go there, knock their door, and meet with the concerned journalists, reporters. And initially it was quite difficult to break in, because they had so many people coming to them to give news, that sort of thing. But with my persistence and also they saw the dedication with which I was working, they would gradually then befriend me. And thereafter, I remember once the BBC correspondent, long-time correspondent, Mr. Mark Tully in Delhi, after several times, meeting him, knocking his doors, whenever I would pop in, he would say, "Oh, Tibet man has come," So that sort of, then the relationship became a little bit informal, more cordial. And then as things grew by some urgent matters, then I was in a position where I could even call Mr. Mark Tully, and then he would, listen to what I was saying, because he thought it was genuine and coming from the heart. Yeah. So that sort of thing.
A lot of commitment.
There was a lot of commitment and a lot of traveling, and in Delhi, summers the heat is 45, 46 degrees, and all we do is we have to travel in this 3-wheelers, and the roads were literally melting. You were sweating. But then what was at the time important for us is the Tibet was more important, the message was more. So with all that commitment, it was quite a struggle, but at the end, all of those struggle, hard work, I think so, did pay off, and we ended up getting quite good media coverage as well.
Did you do anything while you were in India after that?
Okay, after that, and so after about 2 years there, then what happened is the Fulbright scholarship was opened up for the Tibetan government staff. So what happened is, previously the first batch of the Tibetan the Fulbright scholarship was only meant for staff members of the CTA, but the condition was the minimum qualification was you had to be 5 years in the service. And since I didn't have 5 years, I just had only 3 years or so, I was disqualified, so I couldn't apply. So the next year, when the Fulbright scholarship was open to everybody, and I was working in Delhi, I thought, why not give it a try, since I'm already based in Delhi, and if you get selected, all those who were selected for the interview, they had to come to Delhi for interview. So I just took my luck, I just applied, and then I got selected. We had to, sit for this Fulbright scholarship test, and I was unfortunately at the time one of the 10 lucky students who got selected. So in 1988, I ended up studying my master's degree in journalism and mass communication at the University of Arizona in Tucson. And the reason I got in Arizona is because one of the American ladies who had worked and had connection with the information office, she recommended to my senior colleagues that University of Arizona has a good journalism studies program, and she can help get the admission for me, everything she can plan. So that's how I ended up there. Yeah.
Why did you choose to study journalism and mass communication?
One of the main reasons is I believe that through journalism, mass communication, you can reach out to lots of people through the stroke of your pen or through just by speaking. So, and in case you do study journalism, mass communication, those programs will give you the tools of how to use it properly. And I think so it's because of this that through my writings and also through communicating, I've been able to reach out to a lot of people, especially while studying at the University of Arizona in Tucson on Fulbright scholarship. I managed to get or literally befriend a lot of Chinese students as well, because they were very ignorant about the issue of Tibet, and I thought by communicating very positively with them, following the advice of His Holiness Dalai Lama, try to win them over as friends, not as enemies. I've been able to educate them on the issue of Tibet. For example, I can give you one basic example. When my first week at the university, I was staying in this university dormitory where you have students from different countries, and we had this what's called the Get Acquainted party. And so and everybody was introducing to one another, and one Chinese student came up to me and said, "I'm Zhao Jiang from China." And I stood up, I said, "I'm Tashi from Tibet." He said, "Tibet?" I said, "Yes." So I thought, okay, let's just leave it there, because let's not spoil the party. So we have a common kitchen, and the next day when I was in the kitchen, cooking my breakfast, he said, "Hello, you from Xizang?" I said, "No, I'm from Tibet." He said, "Xizang?" I said, "No, Tibet." Then I said, "If you want to listen to my story, you want to know my story, I'm happy to give you if you have the time." He said, "Yes." So we sat across each other, and then in a very friendly, polite way, I explained to him why I, being a Tibetan, am not able to live in my own country. How I lost my parents at the age of 4 or 5 because of Chinese invasion. And how Tibetans in exile under the leadership of His Holiness Dalai Lama are now getting all that opportunity to get basic education. And, then able to stand up and to make more people aware about the Tibetan cause issue and also work towards it. And how we Tibetans are neither anti-Chinese nor anti-China. Towards the end of the conversation, he was literally in tears. He said, "Please don't hate me." No, I said, "I don't hate you. As I said, we are not anti-Chinese. Look, because of this oppressive Chinese regime, look how ignorant you are. Otherwise, if China had not invaded my country, why would my parents escape to India? There's no reason." So that very friendly atmosphere, tone, or the talk, communication, communicating with him, I think it really helped, and it gave me a lot of peace of mind. And the following day, when I was in the university campus talking, suddenly he called me, "Tashi, come here." And he was talking with a group of Chinese, First I thought whether to go there or not. I became a bit panicky because a lot of Chinese students were there. Anyway, I went. He said, "This is Xizang, Tibet, But none, he was saying Tibet, but they were saying Xizang. He eventually I think so, managed to tell them he's different from Chinese, And then I walked away, and then he was explaining, A week later, the same Chinese student from mainland China came to me with, Tashi, he gave me a newspaper clipping of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I thought, wow, that His Holiness path he has shown to reach out the Chinese as friends, and that's really helped. The first day, if I had met him and I just argued with him, shown my, moody face and punched him, he would have punched me back, and that's the end of the story. So it's very important that we reach out to the Chinese in a very positive way. And then a month or so later, I was invited by the Chinese Students and Scholars Association at the university. Somebody called me, said, I'm the president of the Chinese Students Scholars Association. Can you please come and give a talk, because we heard you're the only Tibetan student in the university. And I was quite popular because what happened is I was interviewed by the university magazine since I was in the journalism's department. And so my face, my interview was flashed in the university newspaper. Everybody literally came to know, and even the Chinese students, I think so, they must have read about it, they have seen it, So that's how they came to know. So first of all, I thought, and he said, we are about 250 students, so can you come and give us a talk on Sunday? First, my initial response was a bit of a hesitation, because if I go there and they just bash me and I'm finished. Then secondly, I thought, this is the United States of America, and you can't do like that. So I took up the challenge and the offer. I went there to give a talk, and the hall was full of them, about 100 or so. So first what I did was, my art of communicating is not just speak about Tibet being freedom. I said, first of all, I would like to show you a brief documentary made on Tibet by the BBC. So I showed them the BBC documentary on Tibet, where they can visually see how Tibet was independent after the Chinese invasion, Tibetans in exile. And then after that, I gave a brief introduction, brief speech. I said, after that, you have any questions, please give me I'm most welcome. So the response I received was quite overwhelming, First of all, from one corner, one of the Chinese students said, first of all, I would like to congratulate you because Dalai Lama won the Nobel Peace Prize, because that's the year His Holiness won Nobel Peace Prize. But then there were also critical Chinese, views. One girl, she said, I'm studying political science. You said, Tibet, you're talking about Tibetan freedom, this and that. What will Tibet do? If China leaves Tibet, you're very poor, you're finished. What will you do? Then I said, like I explained before, I was explaining to my kids. I said, the reason why China occupied Tibet? She didn't have much clue. So I said, one reason China occupied Tibet is because of strategic location, land mass, natural resources. She said, what natural resources you have? I said, I'm not saying, even scientists have proved that Tibet has the world's largest deposit of uranium in the world. And then she had no reply for me, And then after the talk, she came up to me and she said, I'm really sorry, I didn't know all of that. So we sort of befriended them, So that's how I, managed to get more and more Chinese support, sympathy for Tibet. And one of the Chinese students one day invited me to his place for a farewell dinner. He said, it's been a great pleasure knowing you. Don't worry, it will take time. I remember going to Tibet also myself. But whatever information, whatever we learn from you, we will try to spread the message to our family, friends. It will take time, but the understanding will grow. So all these meeting with the Chinese, trying to get hold of them, trying to befriend them is very important. And similarly, I remember being once invited to the Atlantic College in Wales to give a talk where there's so many Chinese students, and I talked about human rights, that sort of basic things, nothing confrontational, and always make a point that, as His Holiness says, we Tibetans are neither anti-Chinese nor are we anti-China, and even all those Tibetan supporters, Tibet support groups, we don't consider them as pro-Tibet, anti-China, we just consider them as pro-justice, that sort of thing. So that sort of message really it relates well with them. And I've had Chinese students approaching me saying that, the talks you give about Tibet are very friendly. Can I have a copy of your speech? That sort of thing. So rather than isolating, and then at the Atlantic College, there were 3 students, and even one of the students, she informed my talk to her dad in London, and the dad told me, oh, my daughter was saying that after you gave talk, now, they have developed good friendly relations with the Chinese students, and they feel more calm, more, much better. So I think that's very important. And that's why I would like to advise the, Tibet support group, as well as Tibetans, and more importantly the younger Tibetan generation, whenever you get an opportunity in your college, university, school to meet with the Chinese, talk to them in a very friendly way, try to win over their heart, because that's the only option we have to try to resolve the issue of Tibet. The more Chinese students, scholars, people are made aware about the true issue or the problem relating to the Tibetan issue or the crisis, then the better chances that the issue will be resolved in the future. And even in my case, I remember when my daughter was in a secondary school at St. Malibon school, she said, there were students, Chinese students from Hong Kong, Taiwan, even from Chinese, and she said, following your advice, I've tried to talk to them, and now, we have become good friends, and even, the Chinese students she would also bring to our house. So that's how you develop friendship, and then through the children, they'll let their parents know, oh, Tibetan people are very decent, they're nice, they're not as bad as the Chinese official propaganda, claim it to be. So that's how we build up the bridge, and hope that the issue of Tibet through this medium can be resolved. Even, as it says, in the interests of both the Tibetans as well as the Chinese people.
Actually, I've had a similar kind of experience, not to your extent, but when I went to United World College, we had a scholarship student from mainland China, and she said to me, what do you mean you're from Tibet? Are you from China? I said, no, I'm from Tibet. And she asked me, do you have any resources? Do you have any information I can read? I want to learn about this. My textbook says Tibet is part of China. Tibet relies on China. And she read through this and she said, oh, I had no idea. But she can't do anything. Her family are still back in mainland China in a rural area. If she does anything, she'll get in trouble. But March 10th came around. She came along. Big sunglasses, and she came along and she joined the protest. And obviously she made sure she couldn't be identified for the sake of her safety and her family's safety. But it just shows that we're actually lucky in the West. We have a chance to learn about all of these things. But the Chinese people in mainland China, they don't have such opportunities. They get such, the media is so sort of censored that they don't get to learn about sort of what has happened to the Tibetan people. So I completely agree. It's so important that we share all of our experiences and the things that we have learned.
Yeah. Okay. And you're right. And then also, every Tibetan, no matter wherever they are settled, whatever background, has a story to tell. And it's very easy to convince the Chinese. You don't necessarily have to refer to some texts or books. Like whenever, I meet them, I tell them, I lost my parents at the age of 4 or 5. Why? Because of China's invasion and occupation. And so my kids now, whenever they confront the Chinese, they don't have that experience, but they can say, my dad lost his parents, literally their grandparents, at the age of 4 or 5 because of the Chinese. Then they reflect, oh, something must be wrong. And then these days, further what I would add is, if you don't believe it, what happened in 1989, Tiananmen Square massacre, your government, so-called government, people's government, killed your own people, ask those Chinese people, and then they have nothing else to answer. I remember, when I was working in the office of Tibet, being interviewed by the BBC radio, and in the panel there was one Chinese scholar, journalist, very, very talkative. But, as the conversation flowed, and then when I was talking from my heart, all those stories, he literally had nothing to say. All he was doing is blah 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 blah, whatever the official propaganda was coming. But when it come to the nitty-gritty, heartfelt, more realistic things, he didn't have to say. And at the end, like, he was literally dumbfounded, and then gradually, like, he began to, like, side with me, So it's and I remember even one of the BBC television interviews, they were talking about during this 2008 Beijing Olympic crisis. So there's one, suddenly from nowhere, there was one English lady, like, the BBC was saying, oh, we interviewed her, like, she was a little bit critical of His Holiness and also about Tibetan issue. And then they asked me, why is it? I said, frankly speaking, she asked for an interview with His Holiness. There was no time. And then after that, she became a bit critical. And I said, basically, whatever she's been saying is literally she's repeating the official Chinese propaganda. And I said, it's like, you invited me for the interview, I just came. If the Chinese ambassador is really confident, then they would also have accepted the invitation and speak with us, face to face. And that really, like, sort of moved the BBC presenter. And then off the camera, they were all really very sympathetic. They said, we know, like, your causes are right, but we have to try to balance out things, But I think so. It's really very important that we reach out to the Chinese, not to consider them as enemies, as you said. They're not to be blamed, and that's the only way we can, like, win them over and hope for the best. Yeah.
I think I completely agree with you in that. So the facts and the resources, more than that, it's the human touch.
Yeah, exactly.
The Tibet supporters, they can help us with those kind of things as well.
Yeah.
I think obviously know your facts so you can back up things, but as Tibetans, it's our responsibility to share our relative stories, our stories, our ancestor stories, our people's stories. And while you were there, I heard that in your university holidays, you'd sometimes spend time doing internships in the Office of Tibet in New York.
Yeah.
And even after graduating, you've done internships in Washington, London, Zurich.
Yeah.
What do you think were the best parts of those internships? What did you gain from that?
Sure. Okay, then, so after each semester, we used to have about 4 months holiday. And then, I had the option of either during those 4 months, trying to find some job at the university or in local companies or newspaper offices, or I approached the office of Tibet in New York, and they said, okay, they would be happy to give me an internship. So since my mind was like, after I finish my 2 years program, I'm going to go back to Dharamsala to continue my service rather than, staying put in America. So I thought, if I work in Office of Tibet, New York, it will give me an opportunity to meet the staff members at the Office of Tibet face to face. So once I'm in India, it'll be easier to communicate with them because people through face to face. The relationship works better, and also the workmanship works better. So the first semester, I interned at the Office of Tibet in New York. The experience was invaluable, although some people did tell me that, oh, you should have worked outside, you could have got more money, that sort of thing. But for me, the more important thing was the experience gained, the connections built up, and that is quite invaluable. And so working at the Office of Tibet in New York, I met a lot of Americans who are very passionate supporters of Tibet, made connections with them. Also, I also had the opportunity to attend a gala lunch meeting with the mayor, with the Office of Tibet staff members, and also I met a lot of Tibetans, because at the time in New York there were not many Tibetans, maybe 200, 300 like that.
Oh, very
like
different.
Currently you have over 20,000. And so everybody knew each other, everybody was so close knit. And I could imagine, because in New York, and then those Tibetans in New York, when they met me, they were really very encouraging. This, you're very, very nice of you. You're so young. You're still working for the Tibetan office, and because a lot of people come out, they want to, like work for themselves. Although whenever time permits, they do work for the community. But I mean, that sort of encouragement, it really inspired me, and I thought people also value, what you're doing. So I ended up meeting and making friendship with a lot of Tibetans in New York as well. And then that went back to university, and the next semester, again 4 months, this time I thought, okay, ICT, International Campaign for Tibet. So I approached them, and then I was offered the internship. I worked 4 months over there, and the good thing was I didn't have to pay for my accommodation, because John Ackerley, who was at the time working at International Campaign for Tibet, I had met him when I was the press officer at the Bureau of His Holiness in Delhi. He and his friend Keith Pitts, in 1987, when there was uprising in Tibet, they were witnesses of the Chinese soldiers firing Tibetans, and I helped arrange their press conference in New Delhi, where John Ackley and Keith also displayed the bullets, that was fired on the Tibetans, that sort of thing. So I knew him from them, and then he very, very kindly offered me to stay at his place, and so again then through him I met more American friends, and at the time when I joined, the International Campaign for Tibet was headed by Kasur Tenzin Tedongla, and then thereafter it was he passed on the charge to Lodi Guerrilla. So during the transition period, and Lodi Guerrilla I knew when he was the head of the information office. So I knew them from then on, and he had also encouraged me that before going there, it would be nice for you to work in International Campaign for Tibet, because at the time he was the Kalin of the information office. So he was a very, very inspirational factor for me at the time. And so International Campaign, through that I ended up along with the ICT staff going to the Capitol Hill, meeting with a lot of congressmen, congresswomen, senators. So I remember knocking the doors of different offices, and just saw how they were working to lobby the issue of Tibet. And again, at those times, again, as I said, things were quite challenging. Information, you had to literally struggle to go to the offices, and but as times went by, all those hard work and effort paid off, and went back to the university, completed my degree, and then Kasur Lodi Guerrilla wrote to me saying that, oh, you have been very good while you were there, now how about you do an internship in London before coming back to India, because I wrote back saying I'm committed to come back. He said, because once you're in India, it might be difficult to go abroad to work. And so I took his advice, and at the time Mrs. Tagla was the representative of His Holiness at the Office of Tibet. At that time it was located in Kilburn. So he said he's going to inform Mrs. Tagla about me. So she wrote to me, she sent me an invitation to London to intern at the Office of Tibet. So with that invitation, I was passing through New York, and I told the New York staff member, since I knew them, I have to go and now get my visa to London. They said, oh, it's going to be quite difficult, because it's very difficult. So the good thing is, I think so, once you follow a good path with full determination, motivation, things seem to go quite well, So what happened is, as I was queuing up for my visa, there was a long queue. So I had my documents, I had the form, I was filling up. By the time I reached the counter, the man said, oh, so you're from Tibet? I said, yes, I'm from Tibet. Oh, very interesting. Do you know what is this? So he had a ring. I said, it's written Om Mani Padme Hum. Oh, interesting. So what does this Om Mani Padme Hum? So I said, thanks to all the information, knowledge I'd gained. I said, it means hail to the jewel in the lotus. Oh, very interesting. And there was a lot of queues, a lot of Indians, and they were all wondering what's happening. He said, oh, so you want to go to London? Yes, sir. Okay, no problem. He just gave me, And when I went back, officer of Tibet, they said, I got the visa. Oh, how did you get it? That's really very lucky of you. So I related this story,
Yeah.
And they all found it very interesting. But it shows, maybe it was my karma, maybe it was good luck. So anyway, after that, I came to London, interned or served at the office of Tibet in London. That time it was based in Kilburn for about 6 months. And during that time, I was quite lucky because His Holiness also visited London and UK, and I had the opportunity to then work under Mrs. Tagla and then see how the visits are coordinated, visits are arranged, that sort of thing. And so it was also a very good learning experience for me. Yeah. And then after about, what happened is then once my term was ending, I contacted my school sister in Switzerland, because when we were growing up, when she was in 7-8 years, her sponsor invited her to Switzerland because she had some disability problem, and then he looked after her, and she ended up settling in Switzerland, met a Tibetan boy, married with kids, and so she had asked me, when I was in America, to come for holidays. So I thought at the time, if I go, it's going to be a long journey plus very expensive. So once I was in London, I realized that it's only about 2 hours flight. So I wrote to her and said, if your invitation is still standing, I would like to come and visit you because it's only about 2 hours flight. And she immediately wrote to me saying, oh, very good, and then at the time it wasn't easy because I was traveling on an Indian identity certificate. Yeah. So I had to again apply visa to go to Switzerland. So she sent me an invitation. I went there, and it clashed with His Holiness's birthday. And so when we were there, there were so many Tibetans, and His Holiness's representative then, Mr. Kelsen Genzela, he saw me. We knew from before because when I was working in the information office in Dharamsala, he came from Switzerland also to volunteer for about 1 year to work in information office. So I knew from them, So I said, oh, so you are here, what are you doing? I said, I've just come here for about 2 months holiday. He said, oh, very good, so you have enough experience. Can you please help me at the office because I have His Holiness's visiting and we need some help. So, and I'll also be happy to, pay you, So then that's how I ended up interning and also, serving at the office of Tibet. It's called Bureau du Tibet in Zurich at the time. Yeah. So for about 2 months, and then for 1 more month, I had to go back, but then he helped with his recommendation. I got 1 month extension to stay. That was like a holiday. So also had a good experience of even working in the office of Tibet then in Zurich. Yeah.
What did you do after?
So after that, when I went back, then even just before my joining, I wrote to the secretary of the information office that now I'm coming back, and then they wrote to me from Dharamsala saying that, oh, it's great to know that you're coming back, and we would like you to be the editor of the Tibetan Bulletin, which is the bi-monthly English journal of the Central Tibetan Administration. So went back, and I became the editor of the Tibetan Bulletin for about a year or so, and after that, since you work for the Central Tibet Administration, like you're working for a government, you get posted depending on where the concerned top officials want you to be posted, or where they think you can now do a much better job. And I was then posted to the office of His Holiness in Dharamsala, where I was the joint secretary and also dealing with the press and media work. So I ended up working about 6 years at the office of His Holiness in Dharamsala, and that was incredible experience, very humbling, and again made contact with a lot of journalists, because I was involved in coordinating the newspaper journalists interviews with His Holiness, and also a lot of journalists, a lot of writers would come to write books on His Holiness or relating to Tibet, or they want His Holiness's advice. I was in the middle of coordinating those sort of things, and so the experience was incredible, tremendous, and also a great learning experience. Yeah.
While you were working in the office of His Holiness, did you get a chance to have any private audiences or anything like that? Were there any perks to the job?
Private audience, no, but I was in the presence of His Holiness for all the newspaper media interviews, as well as whenever His Holiness had audiences or meetings with groups, or like Buddhist groups, or environmentalists from different colleges, institutes. So His Holiness's secretary, Mr. Tenzin Geshe-la, was my boss. He would ask me to be there at those meeting audiences, and along with at the time it was Geshe-la who was His Holiness's translator, and we would jointly be there, coordinate, help with the seating arrangements, that sort of thing. And once a while His Holiness needed help with some English words. In my case, mostly journalistic or political, I would assist. So it was definitely in the presence of His Holiness, but not privately as such. Yeah.
And what did you do after spending your 6 years there?
And then after working His Holiness office over 6 years, I was posted back to the Bureau of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, but this time on promotion as the secretary of the Bureau of His Holiness Dalai Lama in Delhi, and where my responsibility primarily was dealing with the press media because of my media press background, and also dealing with the Indian government office, foreign embassies, foreign missions relating to His Holiness and Tibet. Yeah.
And how did you end up getting from New Delhi back to London?
And then what happened is from Office of Tibet, Bureau of His Holiness New Delhi. Then one day I got there was a notification posting me to the Office of Tibet in London, and which was a great honor, and also I was able to take up that challenge because having already been in London before for about 6 months, and so I ended up working in the Office of Tibet in London, initially as the secretary and the press information office for about 5 years, and then following at the time Mrs. Tagla was the representative of His Holiness, but in 2007, when she was asked to become a minister in Dharamsala by Kalun Triba Samdorumbuche, so there was a vacancy for His Holiness's representative position in London, and I was then appointed as the representative of His Holiness. I worked as his representative for over 2.5 years or so.
And during your time working in the CT in the London office, His Holiness visited, is that correct?
Oh, His Holiness visit, lucky for me and also for the Tibetans in UK, elsewhere. His Holiness at the time visited several times, and I was involved in His Holiness's visit to the UK, His Holiness visit to Poland twice, and he also visited Denmark. And I also was responsible for arranging his first ever visit to Iceland, and those were incredible experience, great fortunate to have been involved in those visits. And of course, it was very, very challenging, and but at the end, because of His Holiness's grace, everything worked very, very smoothly. Yeah.
Those were the times when His Holiness met with King Charles.
Yes, yeah. During that visit, what happened is His Holiness that year in 2008, His Holiness, one of the invitees of His Holiness visit to UK was the Terminus Academy, and King Charles, Prince of Wales then, he was the patron of that organization. So one of the inviting parties was the Terminus Academy. So they invited His Holiness's public talk at the Westminster Hall. Initially, it was quite interesting how these things developed. First, when the officials from the Terminus Academy came to see me in the office, they said, "Oh, we would like, just to let you know that His Holiness the Dalai Lama has accepted our invitation to give a public talk, and I've been asked to approach you and to now to work on the visit, how to go about it." I said, "Okay, so what's your plan?" So they were saying, two of them came and they said, "Oh, our plan is to hire a hall, maybe where about 200-300 people will come and attend the talk." I literally told them, "Are you joking?" They said, "What do you mean?" I said, "If you're inviting His Holiness, you should hire a much bigger hall. There should be thousands of people." I said, "No, but we are not sure that many people will come, because normally when we have talks, it's only about 200-300 people." I said, "You get a big hall, I will guarantee the audience, that will come. I mean, it's just for 200-300 people, it's a wastage of His Holiness's time." Although luckily what happened is, whenever His Holiness visit any country, we make a point that it ties up with several invites, so that it's just not for one trip, just to avoid His Holiness traveling back and forth. So then we sat down and I explained to them, how things had worked in the past. So eventually they managed to get the Westminster Hall, whose capacity is over 2,000 or something. And I said that what you need to do is you need to make the tickets to do good publicity, make the tickets available to the public. And once they did that, a week later, one of the officials called me and said, "Oh, great, it's not even 1 week, it's almost full." I said, "Exactly, that's what I told you." And eventually, and in the meantime, the King Charles' office was also in communication with me. I met his principal secretary a few times, because Prince Charles wanted His Holiness to also visit his place at the time in Clarence House, and so I helped coordinate that. And the organizers of the public talk informed me that even King Charles, Prince Charles then also wants to attend the public talk. So with that, now the talk also became more high profile. The Metropolitan Police got involved. Before, since it was His Holiness's visit, they were involved, but not really that publicly. But with King Charles coming, so now the police were also approaching me regarding the security arrangements. So in the end, everything worked well. When His Holiness came, the hall was packed. People were standing. Everybody was very impressed. Encouraged to see. Even Prince Charles was there on the front row. And then the talk went very well. After the talk, His Holiness then went to Clarence House, where he was met by King Charles, his wife Camilla, and on their request, he also even planted a tree. And then they had a very good initial introductory, they met few times before, but initial sort of a literally warm-up meeting, that sort of thing, where I was there. And then it was a private lunch King Charles hosted for His Holiness.
What do you think the biggest hardship of organizing such high-profile events was for you personally?
Personally, is especially one of the most important thing is for the visit of His Holiness is the security aspect. I mean, we can hire private security, you need to pay for them, but it makes a big difference if you get the security arrangements officially. So the year His Holiness visited the UK during my time in 2008, I did approach the Foreign Office, and then the Foreign Office, through them, then I approached the Metropolitan Police, and like they were not in a position to provide very visible protection, like having police in uniform leading His Holiness's motorcade, that sort of thing. But I did manage to eventually secure two plain clothes security officers accompanying or behind His Holiness's car, and that was very, very reassuring. So the security part is one aspect, and then another thing is, a lot of those organizations who invite, they think they know better, that sort of attitude they have. So but the reality is we know much better, His Holiness's likes, dislikes, what works, what doesn't work. So again, like negotiating, that sort of thing. Because at one point, like when His Holiness was invited to give some big teaching, and the organizers had arranged a very high throne for His Holiness to give the teaching. So my advice was, is maybe get a lower throne with a lower one, not that high. There's, no, but we have other lamas. I said fine. When His Holiness, before the teaching, he saw this, he said, what's this? I informed. I said, they've arranged this throne for you for the next teaching. No, I don't want this smaller one. So and then they felt a little bit embarrassed, and then they had to make changes, and then have a medium size. I mean, that sort of a thing His Holiness liked, and we know much better, but they would. So they wouldn't. They thought maybe what they were doing is more correct. I mean, those sort of things, technical things, little bit here and there, that sort of thing. And what I find eventually is once His Holiness comes, he settles, and then everything seem to work quite smoothly, because we have laid out most of the groundwork from before. And then another challenging part is when the most challenging part is whenever His Holiness is coming, then the Office of Tibet will receive so many communications, so many people calling, we want His Holiness, do we want to meet His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, this, and then media requests, that sort of thing. That becomes quite challenging, and sometimes a little bit disappointing, because those people haven't contacted the office for ages. Suddenly now they are coming, we have done this for Tibet, we would like to see. And at my intention at the time is, I value people who have been working with full sincerity, with good motivation, on a very constant, regular, not like suddenly coming in, And there have been cases where, organizing those audiences and meetings. And also, like, since I used to work very closely with the Office of His Holiness, I know most of the officials there, giving proper briefing, which audience request is worthwhile or not, that sort of thing. And then I also make a point to, rather than, having individual meeting appointments for His Holiness, to club them all together, like all the Tibet support groups together, rather than, because some NGOs, they want separately, but His Holiness has no time, so cover it all together. So, those things are a little bit challenging, and at one point I remember, His Holiness telling me some particular group, how are they, that sort of thing. And I informed him quite frankly. I said, they're okay, but the thing is, whenever they realize, they know that you're coming, then they approach the office, we want audience, this and that. And when you're not there, they hardly communicate with us, they hardly contact us. And that's why I've not been able to arrange private audience. It's with a group, that sort of thing. He said, okay, that's fine. Yeah, it happens sometimes, So, but those people who have been very consistent, like in Northampton we have Carolina Scattergood, very humble lady, very passionate, and I went out of my way to include her in the group audience, and she felt very grateful because she never approached. She's not that kind of type. Oh, His Holiness coming, now I want to see, give and take. No. And then I go out of my way to His Holiness coming. I have arranged audience for Tibet support groups. You come, one of them, and also to keep their moral high, that sort of thing.
And during your time as the CTA representative in London, what other responsibilities did you have?
Okay, the responsibilities are quite great. I mean, what I normally describe is at the Office of Tibet, we only have His Holiness or the CTA representative. We have a secretary, then we have an accountant.
Yeah.
It's only 3 people in the office. It's like mission impossible. You're supposed to cover, in my case, the Office of Tibet as the representative of His Holiness. We have to be responsible for UK, Northern Ireland, Poland, Baltic states, Iceland, that sort of thing. Mission impossible. And it's and then with very limited resources, with very limited manpower, and also during my time, immediately after I was appointed as His Holiness, my replacement as the secretary wasn't appointed.
Right.
It took almost 1 year, So at the time it was just myself and Chambagenzela, he was the accountant, 2 of us, and he was also responsible as the secretary of the Tibet House Trust. It was a really very challenging, but things seemed to work. Things worked quite well because we were working day and night. We were working with full motivation and dedication, and there was no Saturdays, Sundays, and sometimes when Dharamsala calls you, it's 3 a.m.
Yeah.
They are calling, but it's 3 a.m. here, but they are calling the Indian Standard Time. You pick up the call, you answer it. You just can't say I'm sleeping,
Yeah.
So that sort of thing. It's very challenging. So we have to try to outreach all the governments, primarily the foreign offices in the UK as well as in these countries, and then we have to also reach out to the different Tibet support groups in these countries, and then also we have to work very closely with all the Tibetan communities, in these countries, and it is very 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 challenging, definitely, and the good thing is once a while when I get the opportunity to visit these countries, and then I make a point to have a joint meeting with, if possible, the Tibet support groups, Tibetan communities, so that let them know each other, because on their own sometimes they have their own differences, they don't get together, but when they see the representative of His Holiness is coming, then everybody just like whenever His Holiness is coming, everybody is willing to come together. I remember when during my time His Holiness was also invited to visit the Lambeth Palace by and that time, based on His Holiness's principle of bringing in inter-religious harmony, they had religious representations from all the different religions. And during one of the interviews, I heard one of the Buddhist religious leader, he was in English, but I remember him saying that it's thanks to His Holiness the Dalai Lama that we are all here, because he has that attracting power.
Yeah.
Because normally, everybody is, doing their own things. So in a way, it was during my time, I remember organizing joint meetings so that all the groups come together, get to know each other, and then you're all working for the same cause, and after that, the working relationship become much better and more effective.
So on top of these challenges that you had, having one less staff member, 2008, the Beijing Olympics,
yeah.
How was that? How was your experience dealing with those hardships?
Yeah, that was incredible, and in a way, like a miracle how I managed it, because I remember at the time being called to do some interviews by the BBC. At one point, the BBC World Service invited me for an interview at midnight, because for them, the important thing is not the London time, but the global time in Asia, that sort of thing. And my wife and the kids, they would be surprised, suddenly you are here, and again I had to go midnight, that sort of thing. But in my mind, it was like, what is important is Tibet is important. You're getting an opportunity, you need to grab it. You just can't let it go, because of some family commitments or personal things. And the good thing is, after I was really interviewed by the BBC, BBC television, radio, Sky, Al Jazeera, and incredible thing is, I was interviewed by BBC Radio for a few times. One day my daughter said, "Bala, you know what? My head teacher was saying that she heard you today, I said, "What?" And then I realized, she also tunes into the BBC Radio 4, which is very popular, And she said, "Oh, he was speaking very good, very well about Tibet, this sort of thing." And then one day when I went to meet King Charles, then Prince of Wales' Principal Secretary, Mr. Clive Anderson, and he said, "Oh, congratulations, I heard your interview." So the amount of reach, impact it has. I'm just there doing one interview, but looks like hundreds, millions of people read. And the BBC Radio 4 is also, listen to all the politicians, foreign office officials, that sort of thing. So it really has impact. And even the people I work at the foreign office, even they were saying, good interview, we heard you. So it was those days were quite challenging, and then even Tibetan officials, Tibetans I'd known, would email me, call me saying, "Oh, we heard you, we saw you doing interview with the BBC, Sky News, thank you, it's very encouraging, all the best." So those things were very motivating as well, yeah.
You mentioned your daughter, head teacher, heard the interview, and you having to go to some of these interviews at different times of the night. How did your family respond when you had to up and leave, or how did your family support you in such times?
Okay, the biggest thing is I have to be very thankful to my wife, because without her support, looking out, because at the time my daughter and son, they were quite school-going kids, they were quite young. She was there to take care of the children, make sure that they go to school in time, come back, that sort of thing. It enabled me to work properly with full dedication in the Office of Tibet, because without the family support, and also the children were small, but then they were a bit understanding, and also I had the opportunity to show them, just for an example, once I was invited by Channel 4 for an interview in 2008, and I told them, since it's a Saturday, is it okay if I bring my kids together? They said, yeah, fine. It was Mr. Jon Snow, he was the presenter. So I took them, and then, the Channel 4, they had sent the car. Then they saw practically, he's also just not going like that. He's being sent a car, he went there. And then Mr. Jon Snow gave us a tour of the building and all. And that really inspired, the kids. Even my son Rabka got to sit. He was, offered the opportunity to even sit on the presenter's seat, the chairs moving around, and that really helped them, And during the interview, they were, obviously they were outside, and so the family support was tremendous. Without my wife and the family's support, I would not have been able to work or achieve what I have managed to achieve working at the Office of Tibet then.
So you're very active in the Tibetan community, and so are your wife and your children. Do you think what you have done and the things that you've experienced has helped encourage them to be active in the community, or do you think that's their own wanting to do that and their own inhibition?
I think so. It could be a mixture, because I don't necessarily remember telling them, like being very pushy, like you should do this, do that. But always, they've seen what the sort of work I do, my passion, my dedication, motivation, all that they've seen. And then once a while, like whenever the issue of Tibet comes, we just informally, casually discuss things. And also in a very plain, simple way, I remember telling my kids the reason why China invaded Tibet is, first of all, the landmass. Tibet is a huge country, about 7 times the size of France. So that's the landmass, because China has a great population, they need some space. Secondly, strategic location. Is being the roof of the world, highest country in the world, China now has nuclear missiles located at strategic locations, and which can point out to the Indian subcontinent. Third, natural resources. Like I told them, even scientists have proved that Tibet has the world's largest resources of uranium in the world, that sort of thing. And one day, my son Ramka came back, and he said there was some debate about Tibet going on, and when he gave the reasons, like from what he heard,
Yeah.
And then the teachers, they were quite impressed, with his logic, that sort of thing. And so maybe, kids normally tell me, like, oh, now we know, because we remember as a child you used to speak about this and this and this. So that's how, you naturally, you sort of take into all of this information, that sort of thing. And then another thing is, I remember when the kids were growing up, every dinner we make a point not to watch TV, nothing, just enjoy the dinner, family atmosphere, but put on the VOT radio, VOT radio, so that, like for them it's difficult to catch up Tibetan language, that sort of thing, but with constant listening you pick up.
Yeah.
So once a while, in case the dinner is settled, everything, I forget to put on the radio, they would say, oh, pala pala, voice of Tibet, and then they would put it on. So that also helped a bit, sort of thing. And it's sort of ingrained also, like it's also like their own individual, passion and feeling a sense of responsibility to do something for the larger Tibetan community and the cause.
So you yourself have been very active from a younger age. Nowadays, a lot of the Tibetan younger generation are highly educated, working as professionals, but I don't feel the same type of passion. Now, I'm not making a general example, but I think overall, what do you think that they can do to sort of help for the Tibetan cause?
I think so. One of the key things is just the realization that you are a Tibetan, and the value of Tibetanness, how much the whole Tibetan situation, just to get to know about it, and also be very fortunate that unlike others, we also have a great leader in His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who has really worked tirelessly. It's because of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's efforts and hard work that what we are today. Because what happened is, in the process now these days, unfortunately, there's some Tibetans, once they're abroad, they sort of tend to think that, okay, we are here, what we have achieved, all because of us. But going back, that's not necessarily true, because you are what you are not because of you, but because of your family. And when family background you trace, and then it comes to how much all is tied up with the efforts and the dedication, the hard work put in by His Holiness. And even in our case, like working at the Office of Tibet, when you go there yourself, I'm from Office of Tibet, there's not much response. When you say, I'm the representative of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, then it's a different posture, different mentality of the other person, So that's also very important to realize. And more important is to I think so, for the younger generation to have that sense of realization that the issue of Tibet is not just the issue of His Holiness the Dalai Lama or few Tibetans or the Central Tibetans, but it's all of us, together. And the reason I remember, when I was working in the Office of Tibet, once one of the Foreign Office officials came to me. We had a meeting, and I informed her about the current situation, what's happening, and then she wanted some more details. And then, sometimes they have their own little ego and, like their own set of thinking. But I told the reason why I'm doing is because I'm more concerned about the situation of people inside Tibet. And I said, for example, in my case, as per His Holiness the Dalai Lama's future Tibetan polity, given in, publicly issued in, I think so, 2002 or something like that. It says that when the issue of Tibet is resolved on the basis of his middle way approach, and when we Tibetans are able to go back to Tibet with a certain degree of freedom, the Central Tibetan administration will be automatically closed. And I said, from that day, I'm literally unemployed. She said, really, what? She couldn't believe. I said, yeah, that's it. But I'm happy to accept it. Because otherwise, normally, normal circumstances, people work for a cause, people, do something, they want to achieve something, and at the end, they want to also enjoy the fruit. But in our case, you have struggled hard, you have given everything. I mean, I said, I have a young family, we have to, I have to think about them, but it's a tremendous sacrifice, yet I'm willing to do that. And who would do that, She said, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't know that. But the thing is, they know it, because we have given that His Holiness's statement few times. But once people hearing it face to face and then reading it is totally different. And thereafter, we had a very good working relationship. And next time the meeting was more gentle, she was more respectful to me, and because she then realized the sacrifices we were making,
Yeah, I think it's amazing that all of the things that you have done, and I understand you continue to sort of write letters to MPs, write articles to newspapers, journals, these kind of things. Whenever I read them, I always feel inspired. But actually talking to you today, hearing your life story, hearing everything that you've gone through, and all of the things that you've achieved has really inspired me personally. Have you got any final words of encouragement for the Tibetan people and the Tibetan youth particularly?
Sometimes, for me, I find the younger Tibetan generation growing up in the West, I find them quite inspiring. I mean, youngsters like yourself, it's very incredible. And, giving up your time, very passionate about Tibet. And so please continue with whatever good work you are doing. And these are, I think, so very, very positive initiatives on your part, and it's also going to motivate other younger Tibetans to follow suit. And more importantly, I've seen that during all my period of services, although there's not much to gain, but at the end of the day, your mind becomes more calm. Your conscience is clear that you have done something, and that really is priceless. And that's why I would urge the younger Tibetan generation to do whatever you can to contribute your bit for the cause of Tibet. Especially, all this is going to help alleviate the suffering of the people inside Chinese-occupied Tibet. That's most important. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Tajana.